Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's the month of devotion and the month of getting to recognize Allah and acquiring proximity with God. And I thought it's befitting and relevant to talk about devotion, considering that this month is all about freeing ourselves and channeling our energies to God. Now, when it comes to devotion, we find that religious traditions at the heart of it ask for devotion. Devotion in the sense of service to God by following His commandments, and also in terms of prayers, reaching out to God, and in a formal way to devote ourselves to God by worshiping God. Now, it seems that the central, essential message of religion is God orientation. And that orientation comes with that inner alignment with God. So, on that note, we ask a question, well, what is devotion? And how does it add to an individual substantively? Here, what we need to understand is that devotion must do something to us very deep within ourselves before it is worthy of being prescribed by God. And what is that? Well, we see in ourselves that we are always growing, we are always evolving. When seen in that light, devotion can only mean to free us from the impediments that block us from arriving at the fullness of our own selves. For us to complete ourselves. It's like a fetus within the womb of its mother. The only task it has is to grow its limbs and its organs so that it can sustain the demands of the life that is to come outside the womb. In the same way, we here in this world are trying to attain ourselves. And that attainment can only come once we free ourselves of the captivity that binds us to an unripened state. So devotion, most accurately, is freeing the captive, the inner being, so that the inner being can come to the fullness of his or her existence. Now, when we talk about devoting to God, we need to understand that our understanding and sense of God will determine how we are directed to God. You see, if we can understand that God is not confined to the Kaaba, or to the throne, or to the hereafter, we will immediately know that journey to God is not one of the body or of the mind. If we can understand that God is the overwhelming reality, He is the only truth to the extent that we understand that there is nothing but God, and that we ourselves can question our own existence, but we can't question the existence of God as God, then our devotion will be very different. In this sense, let us give the example that the Sufi masters often quote. They say an undiscerning observer standing at the shores of the ocean marvels at the waves and says, "How mighty are the waves?" And the one standing next to him, filled with insight, says it is nothing but the ocean. You can actually question the existence of the waves as independent existence, but you will never question the existence of the ocean, and you will say, these may appear waves, but they are nothing but the ocean. Now, if that is indeed the case, and God cannot be confined as is our belief, and as the Quran states, He is the first and He is the last, He is the apparent and He is the hidden, or as the Quran says, wherever you turn, you will find the face of God, or as it says again, that He is the light of the heavens and the earth, then we have to ask that this devotion that I offer to God, how is this devotion meant to be offered? And this journey that I take to God, who is the principle of absolute perfection, how is this journey going to be taken? Because He is not located in a place. So turning to the Kaaba or Baytul Muqaddas or any other place, is that turning to God? The answer is, well, yes, it's the turning of the body to God. But does that bring me closer to God? Because He is not confined in a place. The response that is offered here is that devotion is all about directing the inner being wholesomely to the principle of utmost perfection, and then to allow that beauty to emerge through us by utmost surrender to it, to the extent that the limitations that we carry in the form of our identities, that I am this and I am that, begin to fade away in His completion. So devotion is all about journeying to God, but journeying to God not through the body or through the mind. It is journeying to God by losing ourselves within God, to the extent that we lose ourselves and the beauty emerges naturally by its own self. And that would be the only substantive gain that we have. That what do I do to complete myself? You see, no matter how much I convince myself of the existence of God, it will not make much difference. Marhum Imam Khomeini used to say this, and I've repeated this on several occasions, that when the angels ask, "Who is your Lord?" when we are lowered beneath the earth, if the heart has not been involved with God, the tongue will stutter. Even if we have been the finest of philosophers, because God has not become a substantive part of us. When you strip away a human being of all layers of identity, it is there that you come to the core of the human being. And if God does not reside at the core of the being, the tongue will not utter His name, because He has still been a superficial feature of our existence. So the journey to God is a very substantive one, and devotion is a very directed practice, where the inner being is directed to God to the extent that we give ourselves over to the beloved, and nothing but the beloved remains within us. Now, if you look at the dua of the first Imam Salamullah alayhi, of Muttaqeen, now you will find an amazing contrast that Imam Ali makes. He attributes perfection to Allah and deficiency to himself, and reaches out to God simultaneously through his perfection and Imam's own deficiency. He says, "You are the guide. I am the one who is misguided. You are clarity. I am the one who is bewildered. You are life. I am death. You are the sustainer. I am the sustained." So when you contrast your relationship with God in this manner, you begin to understand that the devotion is to a substantive, perfect source, where we are giving up our identity. Instead of feeling that I am complete and perfect, that I have control over my life and my sustenance, we are immediately admitting to ourselves our deep inner lack. And through that, we direct ourselves to the principle of perfection. What that does is, it removes our false sense of us and I-ness and allows for Him to beautifully emerge through us. Basically, Devotion brings about inner completion, and that inner completion is nothing but the ocean reclaiming the wave, and the wave coming to a point of stillness and fading away. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.